Trauma changes everything. Trauma changes things. Have you experienced trauma in your life? How has trauma, has suffering, has that accident, that event, that abuse, that word, that relationship impacted you and changed you, marked you? Trauma can surface and show itself in us in surprising places, around different people, different circumstances. I'll never forget sitting alone in a hospital room with my grandfather, holding his hand, watching as his breathing became more and more and more labored until finally he breathed his last breath. I got up from my seat. I kissed his forehead. I walked to the nurse's station to let them know that my grandfather had passed. And then 6 months later, I was surprised by these feelings of just overwhelming emotion, surprised by these feelings of anxiousness and fear, deep, deep, deep sadness. Where was this coming from? It was coming from a place of trauma. I had not really acknowledged the pain of the moment. I had not really walked through those feelings. Trauma has this powerful ability to live deep down within us and work itself out in us in very surprising ways. It can dictate our lives, direct us, and drive us. What trauma have you experienced? What unchecked trauma, undealt with trauma might be living beneath the surface in you? Brent, why are we talking about trauma? Why are we talking about something so heavy? Because the heavy things in life, when we face the heavy things in life, there is hope and there is the possibility for healing. And healing changes everything. In Mark chapter 5, Jesus and his disciples are on the shore of the Gerasenes. And there is this massive structure, these tombs in the hills. There in the hills, this man lived, a Gerasene demoniac, who was notorious for screaming and wailing and agonizing in pain night and day. People were terrified to approach this region where Jesus and his friends had landed. Suddenly, the man from the hills runs down in front of Jesus and he says, "What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? Please don't torment me." Please don't torment me, is what he says to Jesus. Why would he think that Jesus, the Son of the Most High God, was there to torment him? Maybe because his whole life was marked with torment. Maybe because he had experienced trauma after trauma after trauma, suffering after pain, after affliction, after oppression. The scripture says that he was bound and tied up by human beings. People had inflicted harm and pain on him. He had made mistakes. There was guilt and shame and all of these horrible circumstances done to this man, so much so that he lived isolated, alone in the hills, in the tombs, living in agony, living under the weight of this trauma. And he comes to Jesus and he says, "Don't torment me as I've been tormented my entire life." Notice Jesus' response. Jesus looks at this man and he says, "What is your name? What is your name?" Have you thought about naming some of the things that afflict you? Have you thought about naming some of the things that have impacted you? Have you thought about the power in acknowledging some of the things that you've experienced? This man says, "My name is Legion, for we are many. The impure spirits within me are many. The afflictions that have marked my soul are many. The pains and suffrages that I've walked through, the mistakes and behaviors that are many. There are many within me." And then Jesus prays for him, meets him in the middle of the mess, and heals him. I love the story because then farmers from nearby see this man standing up and in his right mind. They had seen him in the tombs. They had heard his agony. They had seen his suffering. They had seen people try and bind him and tie him down. And now they see him put together and healed. And they're terrified. They're saying, "Who is this Jesus that he can meet a man in the midst of his trauma and heal him?" Then Jesus sends this man, put together, healed, back home and says, tell everybody you know the amazing things that God has done for you and the way he moved with mercy in your life. And many people were amazed and came to believe because of this man, full of trauma, who had experienced healing. Many people gained a strength. Many people found healing because of someone else's healing. Can I ask you, I know this is heavy. What have you experienced in your childhood? What have you experienced in your life? What pains, what losses, what disappointments have marked your life that have gone unchecked, undealt with? Have they lived beneath the surface? Have they driven you to isolation? Have they driven you to just coping mechanisms to try and feel? And what would happen if we brought those traumas to Jesus and to one another? What if we named those traumas and those sufferings? And what if you and I experienced a healing that could change everything? May we experience the healing from Jesus, Son of the Most High God, who is not here to torment us in our trauma, but is here to heal us. May that healing change everything in us today.